I woke up around 1 a.m. to an unusual silence. When I say silence, I mean no cars driving by, no distant bass, no whispers in the hallway or footsteps from upstairs neighbors, no hum from air conditioners or fans. I mean silence. In the darkness, I began to run my hands across my bed sheets, fumbling to find where it was my phone had ended up while I slept. Eventually, I found that somehow it had made its way underneath one of my pillows. I rolled onto my back and unlocked my phone to discover that while I had slept, the clouds of smoke that had slowly been working their way here had finally settled in. And ash had, hours ago, begun to fall nearby. The air quality in the west coast of the United States was now, by a significant margin, the worst in the world. Laying in this quiet darkness, I knew that meant I needed to get out of bed, pull my air conditioner from the window so that I could close it, let my air purifier start doing its job, because for hours now, smoke had slowly been seeping in. But I refrained and kept reading, resigned to the taste of bonfire on each breath. I read that, yet again, dozens of peaceful protesters had been arrested and some hospitalized by the Seattle Police Department. And yet again, elected officials had failed to act in any meaningful way to protect their citizens from these armed gangs, or take any sort of action at all against these entrenched thugs. As our nation gaily saunters its way to continued escalation and violence. To justify their actions today, the SPD took photos of improvised weapons of resistance as if somehow a few rocks, bottles, or clearly posed Molotov cocktails were in any way comparable to or as frightening as armored vehicles, firearms, chemical weapons, or even just the political amnesty that the police flagrantly brandish. And this year alone, the police of the United States had killed at least 781 people. The next part of my daily routine was checking statistics for COVID fatalities. Today, yesterday, and the day before, it had only been a few hundred, which is quite anomalous, when the days and weeks prior had been well over 1,000 every day. But to be fair, it was pretty normal for the number to be underreported during weekends and holidays. And that insight was troubling, because that insight was emblematic of the fact that this had become the new normal. And it had been the new normal for months. Daily clashes between protesters, counter-protesters, and police for hundreds of days. Thousands of people dying from a preventable epidemic for hundreds of days. Climate change not being meaningfully addressed in any way for decades. And piece by piece by piece, it's becoming increasingly clear that this nation is not going to be in any way reminiscent of what it has been, for better or for worse. That this is a moment, a poignant moment of transformative potential, as all crises are. A crisis is a breaking point wherein one of two things can happen. Things can significantly change for the better, for the worse. Or depending on your financial class and political ideology, your desired outcome may vary here, but what troubles me aren't my opposition, aren't the entrenched bodyguards of capital, whether it be in the media, in the streets, whatever. No, what bothers me are how so many people can be politically inactive and inert right now in the face of all of this. Sure, they'll post memes about wearing a mask or post hashtags about the latest victim of police brutality that they're aware of. Oh, they'll talk about voting. But they won't join a fucking union. They won't join Democratic Socialists of America, which is really the biggest tent, most entry-level organization that I could recommend to people. Oh, instead, they are predictably and almost understandably clinging to whatever sense of normalcy that they have left. Talking about people getting married, their jobs, their work. Now, we're so conditioned to have no real identity outside of our work. No real identity outside of these very small circles. We've become so disconnected from our civic responsibility to participate in the world around us. Yeah, I mean participate in voting, but I also mean participate in direct action. If your neighbor is being torn from their home and have nowhere to go, what so often we do is just say, oh, it's terrible, and do nothing. Maybe the best case is we take a video of it and post it to social media to say how bad it is. In the last Great Depression, the first Great Depression of the United States, and have no illusion, this is a second one. It's early days, but this is a second one. Farmers in the Midwest took to responding to banks foreclosing on their homes and property by showing up to the auction for those homes with guns, so that the prior owner, the rightful owner, could offer a bid of a penny, and should any outside investor try to raise that bid, well, they might be investing in a pine box later that evening. We cannot wait, hopefully, patiently, desperately, for someone to save us. We cannot sit and say things will be better after this person is elected, or this person is out of office, or whatever small, trivial thing we're waiting on. We are so conditioned to enable the abuses that we suffer day after day, week after week, year after year, by saying, oh, it'll get better. Oh, it'll get better. Oh, you just have to be patient. No, things are bad because we have been patient. Things are bad because we have waited. Things are bad because of this needless martyrdom. You deserve better. Your friends deserve better. Your family deserves better. We have such unparalleled power if we stand by each other. That's what Labor Day is about. Labor Day is a reminder that minimum wage, having a weekend, having a minimum age to work, a maximum number of hours per week before overtime kicks in, all of these rights and things that we take for granted were not given to us through benevolence or charity or kindness. They were ripped from the hands of our oppressors and abusers through violence, obstinance, and bravery. And the only way that things can stop getting worse or start to get better is through those same mechanisms by which we have won victories in the past. If you are an American patriot, if you are proud of this country, one, I got a lot of questions for you, but two, this country did not gain its independence through peaceful protest. The Nazis were not removed from power by peaceful protest. The genocide of indigenous peoples in the United States did not stop in the face of peaceful protest. Slavery did not end through peaceful protest. If you want meaningful change in the world, if you want to participate in the course of human history, what you need to do is organize. Don't give me some horseshit excuse about, oh, but there's not a chapter here, or, oh, but the nearest protests are so far away. Start one. Join one. I don't need your fucking excuses. Neither does the world. Because that excuse isn't stopping the downward spiral that we're in. That excuse isn't stopping things from getting worse. That excuse is just making you feel like it's okay that you're not taking any responsibility for what's going on. And frankly, it isn't okay that you're not taking responsibility. If you have an income and you're dedicating the disposable part of that income to things that aren't meaningfully improving the chances of a better future, if you have spare time and you're not using that to connect with organizations, to rally your neighbors, friends, and family to meaningful, direct action, you're not really doing anything. I want to remind you that all those months ago when we as a country and as a planet saw that police precinct burn, it polled better than either candidates running for office right now. 54% of Americans were in favor of that precinct burning to the ground. 54%. And now, because of the machinations of the media and the capitalists, so many people, liberals really, feel obligated to say that, oh, they don't endorse violence. Yes, you do. You're just too much of a coward to admit it. If you don't endorse violence, well, then clearly the only side to take is the protest side. A peaceful protest didn't win India its independence. It didn't win the civil rights movement. Peaceful protest has been one part of a larger movement. Has been a demonstration of power, but that demonstration of power, of potency, of populism is empty, hollow, and fragile if not backed by demonstrating the will and ability to use that populism, to use those numbers for direct actions. Building things, tearing things down, stopping police physically, de-arresting people, or arresting people. I don't want this to be my new normal. I don't want this to be your new normal. I don't want 15% of American households to be having difficulty feeding their children, and that statistic is a month old, so it's probably worse by now. I don't want a third of Americans to be potentially forced out of their homes. I don't want the highest unemployment numbers we've seen ever. I don't want 1 in 4 Americans under the age of 30 living with their parents. American adults now live with their parents. I can't understand how you can be seeing any of this, let alone all of this, and not be enraged to the point of action. This has been my morning, and I'm willing to bet it hasn't been dissimilar from yours.